Caskey reaches for that ball's out. That's live. Back the other way, Sam Hubbard, the Cincinnati Kid. Hubbard's got a convoy, chased by Andrews at the 30, the 20. He will score.
To the end zone, down the field, and it is deflected and gone. Touchdown, A.J. Green.
Goes back to throw. Men are coming late. Looks right down the middle. There's Eddie Brown. He has it at the 35 to the 30. He may go 10-5. Touchdown.
Now the Bengals Super Bowl chances rest on his right foot. The kick is up.
Yeah.
It is good.
Corey Dillon, he's gone. The knockout punch, you're looking at it. 65 yards.
And they're back to throw as the blitz is on. Goes long, intended for Collinsworth. He has it down to the 20. Touchdown. And Chris Collinsworth.
Throwing the long ball. Deep down the field. Chad Johnson's got it. Touchdown, Cincinnati.
Look at Chase go. Oh my goodness, what a gear he just found. Chase for the touchdown. Wow, Chase is on the case.
It is no fluke. It is a fact. The Cincinnati Bengals are headed to Super Bowl 56. The play clock at 3. Shotgun snap. Carr throws into traffic. Intercepted. Jermaine Pratt has the football.
Yeah.
Coffin nails.
Bam, bam, bam. How about that?
How about that? I guess that's pretty much the only thing you can say there. Pretty crazy day for the Bengals, able to get the win. 19-17, don't quite cover, but step one on the ticker is what I need to do right now, and it's just breathe. I thought we were looking at another ending of another painful loss for the Cincinnati Bengals, and this one would have ended the year. But alas, we hold on and we get the win. Craig, how do you feel? Because they watched it with me. They know how I feel.
I look, it was not pretty. It was AFC North football for sure, and the Bengals ultimately did just enough to walk away with a win. They got, let's be honest, they got some help from the Steelers. A lot of drop passes by the Steelers, a lot of missed open receivers by Russell Wilson tonight. But you know what? If you want to be in the playoffs, sometimes you got to get lucky, and this team has gone an entire season with the string of bad luck. So feels good to finally have one go our way. Now we've got about, 20-ish hours? Or we need some more good luck to go our... Yeah, I'm going to go with 20 hours. I think that's right. If it's not, it's 11:15 at night on the East Coast. Nobody's going to judge us if I'm a little bit off, right? So
we've never claimed to be
20 hours.
We've never claimed to be a match show.
At the end of the day, if the Bengals can get 24 hours of good luck out of this season, and that's how they earn their way into the playoffs, I think that's all you got to worry about. Forget the previous 17 weeks. Let's just move forward.
It's amazing that the Bengals just beat the Steelers. I have it right behind me, Jamar flipping off Minka. And usually when the Bengals beat the Steelers, it's immediately super high highs and some of the most exciting wins of the season. But I think, I know I speak for myself, and I'm sure most people in the chat, but as soon as that goes final, all I can think about is my season, the greatest season of a quarterback in the history of my franchise, the greatest season by an edge rusher in the history of my franchise, the greatest season by a wide receiver in the history of my franchise is in the hands of Carson Wentz and Aaron Rodgers. And before we get into the playoff picture and everything that happen tomorrow, we're going to talk about this win. But it's just a shame that a win that was so hard fought and gritty and a 2-point escape in Pittsburgh doesn't feel quite as fun as it usually would, given the circumstances we're obviously in right now.
Well, it's hard to enjoy a moment like this. I think
Right.
if you're in this locker room right now, I'm sure Zach Taylor's telling you, oh, well, enjoy this. You've done everything you can do at this
How many
point.
game
Just
balls
go
tonight?
enjoy it. Oh
10?
man, 12.
12.
Well, let's be honest. I mean, at least because let's be honest, he's going to give a game ball to everybody on the defense.
Right.
The entire defense is going to get one. So there's 11 people right there plus. Right. So you got 11. You got 11 right there. You probably give one to T for going 17 and 17. Right. Mm-hmm. So there's 12. Yeah. What did I say? T. Yeah. I meant Jamar. You know what I meant. Yeah. You probably give one to Caskey, 8 catches. You probably give one to Khalil Herbert. He ended up touching the ball 27 times, gets 83 yards. Probably give it to him. So, yeah, I'm going to go over-under at 14.5.
Fair enough.
Oh, ooh, that's bad. No, you're going to have to give another one for the turnover.
Okay.
14.5, but I'll take the over.
All right. I like that. I like that. But before we move on to the playoff picture, which I'm sure will take up the bulk of this conversation, the Bengals finished one of the most tumultuous seasons of my life, maybe organizational history, above 500. 9-8 now for the 4th year in a row, finishing above 500. And a lot of people, are calling for Zach Taylor's head and everything like that. But starting a Mike Tomlin streak of his own, 9-8 and 4 seasons down, just a few to go.
Did we just compare Zach Taylor to Mike Tomlin?
Well, we did it last week too, so.
I know. Look, yeah, above 500, great.
Right, exactly.
At the end of the day, let's get to the playoffs. This team's expectations were to be winning 10, 11, 12, maybe even 13 games this year, and they end up coming away at 9-8. Look, at the end of the day, if it's good enough to sneak into the playoffs, nobody's going to bat an eyelash at it.
Exactly.
But again, when you potentially miss it by half a game, everybody's going to bat an eyelash at it. So, yeah, tip of the cap to Zach. Whether people want to admit it or not, and I'm certainly one of the most critical of Zach. What he's done is he's leaned into his strengths, and this Bengals offense has, for 4 years now, really been a very, very good NFL offense, and a lot of that is part of on Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Yeah. But at the end of the day, Zach's the one that's putting together the game plan, and he's the one that's calling the plays. And there's certainly lots of moments throughout the game where you're pulling your hair out, wondering what he's doing. There were some of those moments again tonight. But at the end of the day, yet again, above 500, this is a Bengals franchise that hasn't had a lot of success like that. So we'll take it, and we move on. Now let's get into the playoffs again.
That's right. That's the goal. And the only reason this team was able to scratch and claw to above 500 after the terrible start, 4-8 start, and they end with 5 straight wins, it's important to recognize who they played in that stretch. This team isn't playing burn it down football. This isn't a normal 5-game win streak where you have a ton of confidence if they were able to sneak into the playoffs. Now, I will say I feel much better than I did at any other point in the season. We have it next on the ticker. The defense played well tonight, and they really have over this whole stretch. But the Bengals with wins over the Cowboys, Titans, and Browns, and obviously the last 2 weeks over playoff teams, but not exactly in convincing fashion, especially tonight. How do you feel about the record? I know, above 500 is not something we hang our hat on. We just went over the expectations, but it does mean a lot that we won 5 at the end to get here. After losing to the Steelers the first time, I know myself and a lot of fans turned their attention to mock draft mode. And now we're watching tomorrow in Week 18 with a chance to sneak into the playoffs if the Chiefs and the Jets can get a win. I think it means something in credit to Zach Taylor and this coaching staff, as well as the leaders in the locker room that we killed very much early in the year for how things were falling apart or appearing to, that when things looked like they were over, they banded together and played the best football that they've played all year. I know it wasn't necessarily the best competition, but to end the season on a 5-game win streak, whether you get in or not, when a lot of people said you were dead after a heartbreaking loss 44-38 on your own home field to the Steelers, that means something. And I do applaud these guys in that locker room and the coaching staff for banding together and finishing this season strong, even if we do end up falling short.
Yeah, absolutely. Myself included. I deemed the 2024 season over. I stole Elliott Rearing's line, and I thought that it was over. And the noise outside of the locker room in the national media and elsewhere was about how much of a missed opportunity this was, and that may still end up being the story of this season. Let's not forget that. But at the end of the day, this team could have very easily laid down. You had so many injuries that piled up over that course of the early part of the season. You had a lot of players who just weren't living up to expectations. But at the end of the day, when it mattered the most, you buckled down and you strung together 5 straight, and you won the games you were supposed to win, right? And ultimately, I think, one of the things that when you look at this season, you're going to say, okay, well, the 9 wins that they got are the 9 wins that should have been penciled in. They didn't lay down and lay an egg against, anybody outside of week 1, with the Patriots game. There was nobody else that beat them that you could have been like, okay, well, that's just an abominable loss, right? Like everything else for the most part was understandable, right? Like, not saying that you should have lost to the Commanders, but you look at what Jaden Daniels did in that game and how good he ended up being, and you understand it. So, again, 5 straight against not great teams. We take it, and now we pray.
That's right. That's right. And that's what it comes down to. And it's a shame that this season could end up coming down to that first Patriots loss. And that's why I am kind of holding this 5-game win streak on a relatively higher pedestal than the teams we played, just because the thing we point to that killed this season, or could potentially kill this season if tomorrow doesn't go the way we want it to, is that week 1 game against a terrible team. And even though these last couple teams were really bad, the Bengals got the job done. And they really did outside of that game all year long. Like you said, they beat all the teams they were supposed to. And the hard part about going towards a potential playoff conversation here is even those losses, excluding the Eagles game against all the contenders, we were right there. They were all heartbreaking losses, which is a hard thing to say for a team that I think we all can agree, removing any kind of bias, is not a good team this year, but somehow still within striking distance of a lot of these contenders. And I think that's why it's so hard watching the way Joe Burrow plays, watching the way Jamar Chase plays, and then watching us be 1 play away from beating the teams everyone says is going to win the Super Bowl. That's why Bengals fans couldn't give up. That's why Bengals fans couldn't let go. And that's what I was saying as soon as that game ended. Just give us 1 more day. We've been holding on and talking ourselves into this forever now. The Bengals' chances have been longer than a lottery ticket for months. And for some reason, Bengals fans have been able to hold on. And all that did tonight was give us 1 more day. We can talk about draft pick and anything else, but this team has another day together. I know they don't play. I know they won't practice, but I'm sure they're all going to be watching those games, dialed in. We saw how the Bills reacted when the Bengals got them in, all watching that together, a very famous locker room video. Hopefully the Bengals are able to get one of those tomorrow, but fans get to rally together for 1 more day. The team gets to rally together for 1 more day, and everyone's talking about coaching and front office changes. All those guys have another day with the roster, with the team they built, to have some hope at a playoff push and a playoff run. And I think that's the biggest thing tonight. We've been holding on to plus 1,600, plus 1,700 for so many weeks now. It's nice to have 1 more day to believe in this team, because with the pieces we have at the important positions, you just can't let go.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, fair enough. That's the thing about tonight's game, which was relatively impressive, is outside of that first drive with Jamar Chase scoring the touchdown, the offense was lackluster at best. That was the only touchdown they scored. They were able to dominate most of the game outside of the red zone, getting down to the red zone multiple times, but just 1 of 4 successful in the red zone. A lot of field goals. Cade York delivered. Cade York delivered tonight. We've had kicking problems all year long, but every time he was called on tonight, he drilled the kick. I think it's important to point to the defense, because we've been on them all year long, and then push comes to shove, season on the line, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but time and time again, this defense came through tonight and kept giving the offense another lifeline. And though the offense didn't seize those opportunities to the fullest potential, they did enough to get the win, and it wouldn't have been enough if the defense had played how they played for the first 16 weeks or so. So massive props to the defense, even though there were a lot of points in this game with missed tackles and a lot of the problems that have plagued them all year long. They did just enough, which is all we've been asking for all year long.
Well, look, we talked about it on Thursday night. We talked about the importance of the defense and how important that unit was going to be towards potential win on Saturday. And ultimately, when you look at it, the defense is why this Bengals team came away with the win today. And for me, we talked about it on Thursday, right? It was two pieces specifically. It was the pass rush, and it was avoiding deep plays and long gains for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And outside of that 25-yard pass to Mike Williams, for the first 53 minutes of this game, Pittsburgh had nothing downfield. They weren't able to really do anything beyond a couple yards. And this Bengals defense was really stepping up their game. There were a couple of plays, DJ Ivey knocks away a pass. You talk about Fig Newton, whose name we said multiple times, your name you said multiple times during the broadcast. George Pickens, he's going to be credited with 2 or 3 drops, but all of them were balls that were knocked away by defenders on last-minute pokes. And I think that really, again, I said it at the beginning, like the entire defense is going to get a game ball, because you look at the stats, and this is by far the best that I've seen this defensive front perform. If you look at next-gen stats for this game, the 4 defenders on the front 4, right? So Myles Murphy, Joseph Asai, Trey Hendrickson, and B.J. Hill. Yeah. All of them within 4 yards or less on the defensive pass rush at the time of release throughout the entire game. Myles Murphy under 3.5 yards, Joseph Asai 3.88, Trey Hendrickson 3.89, and B.J. Hill 4 yards, all of which well under the NFL average of 4.57 yards. You've got to tip your cap to the front 4 and the pressure that they were able to get on Russell Wilson all night, and you got to tip your cap to the secondary, who quite frankly played probably one of the better games that they've played all year. Obviously, Cam Taylor-Britt had a couple penalties early on, but I felt like they were kind of ticky-tack. At the end of the day, I thought this Bengals defense really stepped up. Sure, some missed tackles here and there, and some, that Najee play towards the end, that missed tackle early on. But I thought in general, this defense played really well tonight. Yeah. And I think when Zach Taylor gives everybody on that defense a game ball, it's probably well-earned, because without them, we're not winning this game.
The guy I pointed out at halftime, and one I just think is worth pointing out again, a lot of guys on defense played well. Obviously, Trey Hendrickson with his monster game when you need it most, always coming through. But kind of an unsung hero, a guy that popped up in the first half, Shaka Hayward, had a really good game in what was his first significant action for the Bengals. He's a guy that's been on this team for a while, practice squad, active roster, kind of bumping up and down. But today, not only did he lead the team in tackles through the first quarter of the game, but he was this close to blocking a punt, and then he forced a fumble on a punt return that ended up, you win a game by 2, you get 3 points out of that drive, ends up winning you a football game. So an incredible game for an unsung hero there. We just talked about the defense, but it was really a game of guys you didn't expect, and another guy you really didn't expect to play well. Sorry to move off the defense, but Khalil Herbert had a really, really good game today when I really was worried about that part of the Bengals offense. Without Chase Brown, without Amarius Mims, you kind of a makeshift unit in there when the run game had already struggled for most of this season without Chase Brown. I mean, Chase Brown has been incredible since he's been in there, but now Khalil Herbert, 3.5 yards a carry, 20 carries for 70 yards, and I think the biggest question here is, will the Bengals ever be comfortable with 2 running backs on their roster at the same time? When Chase Brown's healthy, he's the only one that gets carries, and I know he's hurt. I know Zach Moss is on IR. They've never trusted Travion Williams, but Khalil Herbert, the only running back with carries today. Joe Burrow, 1 rush for -1 yards, and that was the only non-Khalil Herbert carry.
I thought Khalil Herbert played pretty well. I don't think he had the explosiveness quite that Chase Brown brings, but I thought that he did his job, right? And ultimately, we've talked a lot about this Bengals offense kind of needing that more powerful back, and Khalil Herbert today showed a little bit of running between the tackles. I mean, a majority of his yards came between the tackles. He popped off a couple runs. He had 11 attempts behind the left guard for 42 yards tonight. So, I thought running inside was good. His outside game didn't quite have the explosiveness that you look for from the running back position in this offense. Just 5 carries for 15 yards outside the tackles, but within the tackles, 15 carries for 54 yards all in. I thought he did a good enough job, stepping in with late notice. Chase Brown kind of tried to give it a go pregame, didn't make it happen. And then the other piece, career high 7 catches out of the backfield. Didn't get a ton of yards out of him, but did what he needed to do out of the backfield, picking up the catches when he needed them and picking up some tough yardage. I do think that this Bengals team is still lacking that real power back to be able to pick up the short yardage. I think it also has a little bit to do with the offensive line being, lacking that physicality. But, it would have been really nice on those 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 plays where, I know a lot of people in the chat were getting defensive about, throwing the ball in those scenarios, but we just don't have that kind of a back. So I thought Khalil Herbert did well enough. I didn't have any real complaints about him. Felt like he picked up some chunk yardage here and there. It just didn't have the explosiveness that Chase Brown might have had, and some of those carries might have been quite a bit longer if Chase Brown had the ball. But I think that Khalil Herbert filled in just fine.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And the other thing we have to talk about here defensively is the penalty that Zach Taylor accepted. He was kind of bailed out by the events of the situation, ended up being a check down right after the accepted holding on a 3rd down penalty, and then Zach Taylor accepts a penalty on 3rd and 15 to push the Steelers back to 3rd and 25. It happened after an incomplete pass, so it would have been 4th and 15 from that spot. However, Zach Taylor gave them a second go at the 3rd down from 3rd and 25. It worked out in his favor. It was a check down to Pat Freiermuth, and the Steelers and Chris Boswell ended up kicking a field goal that was about 2 or 3 yards further than the original field goal they would have attempted. But nonetheless, even though it worked out for him, and I'm usually a results guy in terms of stuff like this, that one had me scratching my head. I don't understand why you possibly give them a chance at another play there to convert that. I understand the chances of converting a 3rd and 25 are incredibly small, but those chances increase when you add a pass interference or a face mask or a roughing the passer or any litany of penalties the Bengals could commit themselves where the Steelers don't execute a 25-yard play, but it still results in a new set of downs. And that's something that I really would be thinking about in that situation. I don't understand the rationale of having them go for it again on 3rd and 25. I guess maybe you're saying we'll knock them out of field goal range if they have another incomplete pass. Maybe you're on the fringe of that, but I really didn't understand that at all. Luckily, it worked out. Bengals got a win, but really a puzzling move there by Taylor.
Yeah, I actually, in a rare occasion here, Jacob, I'm okay with it.
Okay.
In the moment, I was confused. I think I even put it in the chat, why are we accepting this? But I think ultimately what it comes down to is at that point in the game, you've got a 6-point lead, and you are seeing that the Steelers are sending their kicking team out, right? So at that point, it's a 50-yard field goal for Boswell if you don't accept the penalty.
Yeah.
Chris Boswell's one of the better kickers in the league, and that 50-yarder, even in this weather, is probably a piece of cake for him. Now, we say that, and we also thought that a lot of those longer field goals were going to be a piece of cake for Evan McPherson this year, and it didn't happen out. Right. So, so you take the penalty, you move them back. They had only had one play of 25 yards the entire game, and it was that lucky pass to Mike Williams earlier in the game. So at that point, your defense had played well enough where you had to have some confidence. All it takes, they had dropped so many balls throughout the entire game that if they were going to try and go deep again, they were probably going to go to Pickens, and Pickens had 3 or 4 drops at that point that maybe you just felt like they didn't have any confidence in Pickens to be able to pick up a chunk. And so, yeah, you go ahead, you take the chance, and you push them back, knowing that, okay, well, if we do give it up and we give up the touchdown, we get the ball back with a chance to kick a field goal to win the game versus, having to worry about 2 field goals and then winning it at the end with another field goal. So certainly could have been swayed either way there. But in a rare occasion, I'm going to be okay with a questionable Zach Taylor decision, which is outside of my normalcy. But I think ultimately when you look at it and you look at the opportunity there and what could have been, again, a 50-yarder for Chris Boswell, not really something he's sweating about a whole lot versus, you push him back to the 43 and so many different things can happen either way. Maybe you give up the first down, but also maybe they drop yet another pass and they're left without a real option. So,
speaking of those drops today, George Pickens hell of a day for number 14. I know you said a couple of them were obviously punched out by Bengals defenders, a couple of good plays. One specifically I can remember from Josh Newton that really jumped off the page. But George Pickens, a guy that they rely on immensely. I would say outside of the guys that are in that number one in the league conversation at wide receiver, they rely on George Pickens as much as any team in the league relies on their number one. They don't have a lot of help in that receiving room. His downfield receptions is the driver of that entire thing. And for the period of time where me, you, Elliott, Justin Kinner, all the guys on off the bench, where we started to believe in the Steelers, it was because Russell Wilson and that George Pickens deep ball were starting to mesh together. Now today, and especially in the last couple of weeks, they're starting to deviate. Is tonight just the next step in the George Pickens saga in Pittsburgh, and it's just going to continue to get worse? Or what was this? Because it seems like things are getting really ugly in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, we had the press conference this week where George Pickens was asked about him and Russell Wilson not being on the same page, and the reporter said, well, that's what Russell said. And George said, well, that's what Russell said, or that's what you said? And the reporter said, that's what Russell said. And George put his mask up and just walked away and said that was the end of that interview. So very clearly some interesting dynamics going on in that locker room. Pickens at the end of the day targeted 6 different times, only came away with 1 catch on it. I can think of 3 drops. There might have been more. But yeah, he had a really rough day. He's had a rough go of it of late. Hasn't really gotten back into the swing of things since coming back from his injury. You know, not a great week last week against Kansas City. He had 3 catches for 50 yards. Tonight, he has 1 catch for 0 yards. The 1 catch, a little screen pass. So I thought the Bengals did a really good job on him. They were physical with him.
Right.
George Pickens has the ability to be physical, but I don't think in this weather he really wanted to be the physical wide receiver that he has the ability to be. Felt more like to me that he wasn't really prepared for this cold weather game mentally, and it definitely showed. That 1 catch, I think I don't have to say this. If you're a Bengals fan and I tell you that George Pickens is walking away with 1 catch for 0 yards on the day, you're feeling really damn good about what's going to happen with that game. So, look, I don't know what he's ultimately going to be credited with, but this secondary did a really good job on him today. Ultimately, if I can find it real quick before we move on, I mean, he was guarded today. Let's see. Where is it? George Pickens, Cam Taylor-Britt twice, Josh Newton 3 times, DJ Ivey 1 time. That was the other one, DJ Ivey. I saw this stat from Charlie Goldsmith today. I don't know if you saw it or not. DJ Ivey on the season has only allowed 1 catch where he was the primary defender.
Wow.
Pretty cool. So shout out to DJ Ivey. He definitely had some plays today where we were calling his name. But yeah, George Pickens, if George Pickens and Russell Wilson aren't on the same page, this Steelers offense becomes really one-dimensional. They really only have the running game and then Pat Freiermuth. And Freiermuth now has beaten the Bengals twice. Both times that they played, Freiermuth had pretty good games, maybe his best games of the season. But I think ultimately, if you're a Bengals fan, you have to be okay with Pat Freiermuth having his and avoiding George Pickens and Van Jefferson and Mike Williams going off on you.
Absolutely.
Because those guys can definitely beat you. Pat Freiermuth will get his, but he's going to do it in a slow and agonizing way. And in a game like this, you're okay with that.
Right, and none of those guys beat you. That's exactly what you're saying. 1 catch for Mike Williams, 25 yards. That was a little twist of the knife at the end of the first quarter where I thought, the Bengals losing their grip. But the defense played well, allowed a score on that drive. But that was really it in terms of big, until the end where they cut it to 2 that really had us scared at any point in that game. George Pickens, like you said, 1 catch, 0 yards, Freiermuth with everything. And you'd think then the rushing game had to have been pretty good. And it had its moments, but as a team, under 3 yards a carry or just over 3 yards a carry. Najee Harris, 3 yards per carry for him. Jaylen Warren, 3.5 yards. And then Cordell Patterson, 1 carry for 1 yard. Really a good job bottling up that run game with the exception of a drive here and a drive there and just a couple stretch of plays. The Bengals offense did a good job with everything. The Bengals defense, I should say, with whatever the Steelers offense threw at them. And if they do get to play another game, this is about as optimistic as I've felt about the Bengals defense at any point in time. And that's been a straight upwards and to the right trajectory for really all of the last 5 weeks, which even if you don't make the playoffs, it's a great piece of momentum building in the locker room to next season. And before we get into what we need for tomorrow, we know that's a lot. We need the Jets and the Chiefs to win. But this means more than just getting into the playoffs. This is a good foundation, finishing strong to go into next year. Even if the Bengals don't get into the playoffs, this is a really good thing for this team and for the future of this organization, right? To finish strong and get a couple wins here, even though I know looking at the draft position, it could hurt us by a couple picks. This still seems like an overall positive, even if it doesn't go our way tomorrow.
Well, when you're talking about a head coach who's really a culture head coach, I think ultimately, you want to see that he's able to maintain that locker room even in the difficult situations, and it felt like he has. We've certainly seen some heated conversations between him and Joe Burrow and others, and obviously we saw after. I don't remember which game it was, but after games where they'll go off on their own and have their own conversation before going to the locker room, and all of these things. And ultimately, I think Zach Taylor, obviously he's got his offense that's really been clicking for 4 years now. But outside of really the whole Jermaine Burton thing that's going on right now, like, really haven't had a whole lot of locker room issues with Zach Taylor.
Right.
And the guys seem to like playing for him. Joe Burrow obviously seems to like playing for him enough. So I think that's big. And again, you talk about kind of getting this momentum, and he was able to get these guys going and ready to play these last 5 weeks despite everything going against them. So got to be happy with that. Obviously, the question becomes, how does Zach Taylor then parlay that into hot starts for a season? Because that's been the difficult part every single year, is that he hasn't been able to get this team ready for weeks 1 and 2. So I'd really like for him to figure that piece out. But it is nice to know that, even if they get behind the 8 ball a little bit, that he's able to rally his troops and get them going and win meaningful football games when they matter.
Right. Absolutely, and that is definitely something to hang your hat on. And as I said earlier, we get one more day to root for this team at the very least. And before we move into the playoff picture, there's a couple super chats from our wonderful fans here on YouTube that I wanted to touch on. T. Brookie, $5. Jacob, love the watch along. Thank you for being an optimistic Bengals fan. I try. Thank you guys for tuning in.
That was as much a compliment for you as it was a knock on me.
I think so. We'll take the fiver. We'll take the fiver. And then TSM Potato, another $5 super chat. Carson Wentz is going to show out. The Chiefs are sitting only 10 of the 22 starters, and it's Aaron Rodgers' last game. We're going to the bowl, baby. He's past even the playoffs. He's saying, you get us in, and we're going dancing. I love that. I love the sentiment. And I think that's where a lot of Bengals fans are at right now. We've lived this entire season on blind optimism, faith, and hope. So why not have it now? If we can get in, the ceiling is the roof, as Michael Jordan said. Who knows where this team could go? And before we get into the optimism and what we need tomorrow and how much that, has a chance of happening, I want to ask Craig a question that we've talked about a little bit on this show, but mostly on Off the Bench. What's the loss that you circle as the most painful one at this point as we look at a 9-8 Bengals team that needs a lot of help on Sunday to get into the playoffs? Oh, Craig, you're muted.
That's what I get. That's what I get for trying to be proactive and giving you your moment to read the super chats. Look, there's so many disappointments, Jacob. I don't really know how you pick just one of them. Right. I think I said on Thursday that I point to the Ravens losses.
Right.
I think if you look at those two games and really the ending of those games, those are really painful. There's just so many different painful losses for different reasons, right? Like the Chiefs one, was that really pass interference? I don't know. the Ravens with the missed field goals and the missed 2-point conversions at the end. Those were difficult. The Chargers game was difficult in how that one ended. The fact that you put up 38 against a Steelers offense and allow Russell Wilson to throw for whatever he did and score 44 on you. I mean, there's a lot of really disappointing losses. I think if I have to pick one, it's probably the missed field goal against the Ravens. That really could have switched how this season went. You know, you talk about starting the season at that point 0-3. You pick up a win against the Panthers, and then you're going against a division rival and an opportunity to really kind of turn things around. After going 0-3, if you would have gotten that win, you would have had 4 straight wins going into that Eagles game. I don't know. It just, that every win feels so painful when you're looking back on it now, knowing what you know, right? I mean, the Patriots game obviously is painful because it was a game that, like, on paper you should have won by 30.
Looking back now, somehow it's more painful. They end with 3 wins. Well, depending on how Sunday against Buffalo goes, they end with 3 wins, picking first overall.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the Chiefs won. That pass interference call,
right?
Whether it was the right call or not, just stab. But look, all of them pale in comparison to if tomorrow the games don't go the way that you want them to go. I legitimately believe that none of the losses from earlier in the season are going to hurt as bad as the Broncos beating the Chiefs tomorrow.
Yeah,
and for our sake, I hope that the Broncos win by 30. I don't want this to come down to a last-minute thing where we're hoping and praying for a missed field goal or hoping that, that Patrick Mahomes can lead or not Patrick Mahomes, but Carson Wentz can lead a last-minute drive to win a game or anything like that. Like, just put us out of our misery if you're going to do it. But, man, I don't know about you, Jacob. I have way too much faith in tomorrow. Way too much faith.
And that was my next question, is how much faith do you have in this happening?
Way too much. Way too much. And they said it in the super chat. I mean, the Chiefs are sitting 10 of their 22 starters, and yet here I am thinking that they have a chance with Carson Wentz to come out and have a career-type game to show that he's still the Carson Wentz of the Super Bowl run and that he deserves to be a starting quarterback in the NFL still today. And that Aaron Rodgers is going to go out on top and throw 3 touchdowns to Devontae Adams in their last game together. And Aaron Rodgers is going to ride off into the sunset with a win and knocking the Miami Dolphins out of the playoffs. And, oh, man, I have no idea why. That 18% that I said on Thursday night feels like 65 right now.
This
and
is
I have
a great
no idea
change of pace here.
I have no idea why. But here's the thing, Jacob. I think there's a difference in, like, legitimate, like, my brain telling me what the odds are, which are like still 10%, and what my heart wants the odds to be, right? Like, my heart is telling me there's a chance. All it's going to take is the Chiefs to get a defensive touchdown, beat up Bo Nix a little bit. He's going to throw 4 interceptions on the day. He's going to have that rookie collapse that you look for. Aaron Rodgers is going to ride off into the sunset. I mean, I have so many scenarios in my head that are like perfect for the Bengals. And then we're going to watch the game and Bo Nix is going to throw 4 touchdowns in the first half and it's just going to crush us. And, like, I don't know.
I will co-sign
we'll see.
that.
How are you feeling?
If the Bengals aren't going to get in, please just end me in, like, the middle of the first quarter. Don't drag me along. It's 4:25 games. I don't need to be dragged along until 7 o'clock. Let's just get this done if it's going to be done. But if it's going to go our way, I'll stay dialed the whole time and wait for a shank at the end, as long as that ending does go our way. And I think I'm with Craig here. I'm getting pretty optimistic, and I was relatively optimistic coming in. I had talked myself into the hardest part of this system being us beating the Steelers. So now, in my mental gymnastics, the hardest part's done. And obviously the odds and, at Vegas and everything like that would tell you that the hardest part is the Chiefs beating the Broncos.
Well, I said weeks ago that the hardest part was going to be the Bengals winning out, remember?
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about how they needed to win 5 straight, and I said, well, everybody's talking about all these other scenarios that need to happen. The hardest thing is going to be the Bengals to win out, and they've done that. And I said at the time that I thought the rest of the stuff would take care of itself, and here we are. The Bengals have done what they needed to do, and now we're in a position where we're relying on others. And, we talked about the scheduling. Now that we're actually in it, Jacob, how do you feel about the fact that the Bengals were tonight and not tomorrow? Or
I love it.
Okay.
It's great that we get
still on
have
board with
this and have some excitement because, we could do an exciting show if the Bengals had known they were eliminated and had rested starters, and we could say, oh boy, we're picking 15th instead of 18th. Let's go. And I would have found a way to talk myself into that. But we get to have a night where we've essentially won a playoff game. And I know it doesn't count as a playoff win, but it was a playoff game. This team knew what they had to do in order to get in, and step one was winning their own game, and they won it. And it had the feeling of a big-time AFC North game, and the Steelers were trying, even though they didn't have more than seeding to play for, and they went down to the wire, and we got a full, great game of close, sweated-out football, and now we get to have a little faith. And if we had already known that we were dead, there would be no joy right now. And I can count on one hand the amount of times I've felt joy with the 2024 Bengals. So it's nice to add one more tally to that list.
So I'm gonna ask the chat. I don't think we have official plans right now, but chat, do we want to watch this together and have our heart broken together, or do we just want to be able to be by ourselves and cheer by ourselves?
The plan was to go live if it looks like it's going our way towards the end.
Listen, if we're in the playoffs, we're going live. That's
absolutely
not a question.
at the end. I was saying if the games look like they're going our way towards the end of them.
I don't know that we wait. I don't know. I'd rather end it early than have to worry about getting on late, right?
Okay.
I don't know. Chat, what do you guys think?
We can figure that out.
Well, let's ask the chat. Let's see what they want. I don't know. Doesn't matter to me. Here's the thing, right? Everybody in this chat, myself, yourself, we're all going to be watching this game. Do we want to have our hearts broken together, or do we want to be celebrating alone? And I don't know. We've got 100 people in here at midnight, and I feel like tomorrow we can all be together and enjoy the Bengals' last hurrah as we try and get into the playoffs. So we'll see. Chat, let us know what you want to do. Maybe if Jacob has this power, I don't know if he does or not, but maybe we can do a chat poll of the night and see what people want to do. And I don't know. Maybe Kirby's still in the chat and he can put it in there too.
Gotcha. I'm working on it.
There we go. But look, it's gonna be wild. I have full faith that the Jets and Dolphins game is gonna go our way and probably be entertaining along the way. The Chiefs and Broncos game is what I'm worried about, but yeah. Let's see what the chat says. Jacob's working on a little chat poll of the day. We'll put it in the chat.
It's in there.
Let us know what you guys want to do. And we will
we'll see what we can do.
We'll see what you guys want to do. But yeah, in the meantime, let's see. Last thoughts from tonight, real quick. We've talked about the defense. I had a couple notes, so I want to make sure I get through some of them. Depending on the outcome of tomorrow's games, will kind of dictate our plan for this coming week, I'm sure. So I want to make sure that we give a chance to go over a couple other thoughts that I had before we end it. Joseph Asai deserves a shout out. At least half a sack in 6 of his last 7 games now. Mentioned earlier, but 3.88 yards per pass of separation. Really feels like he's coming into his own now that he's given a little bit more opportunities. They've moved him around the line a little bit, given him some different looks. Feels like he's in a position now that really is kind of, right now at least, for better or for worse, the Bengals' second best pass rusher.
Yeah. I would certainly agree with that, and I think he certainly opened the door to coming back. I think that's something we kind of brushed off earlier this season, and I think that's a no-brainer now.
Yeah. The other thing I want to mention, Mike Gesicki, we talked about him a little bit, but like, I don't think anybody expected him to have the type of season that he's had. Another solid game tonight. We already talked about a little bit, 8 for 68. I just look at the season that he had and what I expected coming into this year. At least maybe it was wrong, maybe it was right, but he's now up over 80 catches for the year, over 650 yards for the year. I know we talked about it earlier in the season about how he kind of became your de facto wide receiver too, but I really do think that he needs to be one of the priority targets for this offseason to bring him back.
I couldn't agree more, and I think we've seen how much he means in this offense. It took a while for him to kind of gel with Jamar and T out there. We saw earlier in the year him dominate as the number 2 option when T was out, and then kind of struggle when T was introduced back into the fold. But now, as the season has progresses, especially these last 2 games, he's been a perfect fit in this offense, kind of emerging into the role that I expected him to play this season as the wide receiver 3 slot option, red zone option, and that's what he's done over the last couple of weeks, and he's proven that he's a viable piece to this offense, and I think he's pretty high on the list when we talk about who we should be bringing back next year. I know that there's a big fall off from 1 to 2 on that list in terms of offseason extension conversations, but I think Gesicki's certainly up there.
Yeah. Jamar Chase certainly feels like a lock at this point for the Triple Crown.
Yeah.
Locked up 101, the 100 yards per game and a touchdown per game. Tied the Bengals single season record with 17 touchdowns. Crazy what he's done. Trey Hendrickson is going to lead the league in sacks. He got 2 more tonight. 15 now on the season, I think. Incredible what he's done. So shout out to Trey and that. And then last one that was on my list is this Bengals guard tandem is trash, and we need to address it.
Yeah,
but
no, I would say, to say the least, that's a big one. And Cody Ford today injured at tackle, but he held his own. Do you have any level of faith in him being one of the starting guards, part of that fix to that tandem next year, or is it a full get 2 new bodies in there?
Well, I don't have a problem with bringing Cody Ford back. I think he's brought a lot of versatility and ability as a backup. I don't know that I'm ready to give him the starting job. I'm willing to let him compete for it in camp. I'd love for them to still draft a guard pretty high in the draft and then see what happens, right? Maybe it's Cody Ford starts at one tackle or at one guard and whoever we draft starts at the other.
Yeah.
Maybe Matt Lee starts at guard or starts at center and Ted Karras moves to guard. They do have a lot of options, but I think bringing Cody Ford back gives you that versatility to make that decision and to be able to plug and play guys in. Plus, if you do have the injuries that you had this year at tackle, not the best, but he's shown the ability to fill in there. So certainly on board with bringing Cody Ford back on an affordable deal, probably a 2-year deal maybe, just to kind of see what we need, but I wouldn't pencil him in as a starter.
Play 4 out of the 5 spots cannot be overstated how important that is. And I know he's not an all-pro Pro Bowl guy, but no one's backup tackle is that good. And the fact that he has that versatility where he's a more than suitable guard, and now we've seen him play tackle at least a serviceable level for a couple weeks, and now on both sides, I think he's crucial to have on this roster, to have the familiarity with the system as well as the comfortability with the rest of the guys on this offensive line. I know we need a couple changes, but we're still bringing back Ted Karras and both tackles. The fact that he has that kind of rapport with the room, I think is important, and the versatility is crucial. So I think he's a perfect guy back up, and he's shown that he's maybe even a little bit more than that. He's serviceable when he has to get in there.
Yeah. The only thing I'm a little worried about that I would be interested to see what happens is another team going to think highly enough of Cody Ford to pay him starter salary, right? Because I think if the Bengals are going to bring him back, you're not going to pay him starting guard money. you're not going to pay him the $10 million that you're paying an Alex Kappa, right? So it just kind of depends on what does another team think that he's worth.
Right.
But if you can get him for a backup salary, $2 or $3 million, then certainly willing to listen to that.
Yeah, no, I think he's kind of a build a backup lineman in a way where he can, do everything relatively well, and that's super important. But yeah, I think these last couple of weeks have been pretty crucial to figuring out what guys you're going to bring back, what guys you're going to move on from. I think the picture of this roster has changed a little bit over the last 5 weeks, and we'll certainly talk about that whenever the offseason comes. We're hoping that's not for a while, but it could be as soon as Monday in terms of the future plans of Chatterbox Bengals and what you can expect from us in the offseason. We'll get a more ironed out schedule planned up as we get there, or when we get there, I should say. But in the very least, even if the season does end tomorrow, we will have a normal Tuesday show breaking down the film from this win. And then at that point, we'll discuss offseason plans and what else you can expect from Craig, myself, and all the rest of the wonderful people at Chatterbox that help out with this program. And we'll give you guys content all throughout the offseason, no doubt about that. Draft prep, signings, everything like that. And then obviously we'll continue to be going live when anything major happens. Obviously 2 things we'll be following all offseason: Jamar Chase, T. Higgins extensions. And as soon as either of those were to go final, we would certainly be live here on Chatterbox to talk about all that. But we're not in the offseason yet. We're still praying tomorrow. We'll have a plan for what we're going to do for those games. We'll get that tweeted out relatively soon, at the very latest tomorrow morning, about what the plan is for both of those games tomorrow. We need the Chiefs. We need the Jets. And we're praying for it. That's all we got left, is we've done all we can do. Now it's on the big man upstairs. We got to pray. If Craig says he's feeling good, that means the rest of us should be feeling good, because I don't think we've heard that all year.
You definitely haven't. And T. Brookie will definitely remind you if
That's right.
If you thought you have.
Right.
Ron Esterman put it in the chat. I apologize. I didn't realize that Trey Hendrickson, initially credited with 3.5 sacks tonight, brings his season total up to 17.5, which matches his total from last year, which was a Bengals record at the time. Trey now owns the 3 top single season sack numbers in Bengals history. I don't think there's really a question in this, but Trey Hendrickson's the best free agency signing that the Bengals have ever had. So
the city? Up there?
Probably.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, and to
Kirby
think
will
about it, he's a guy
correct me
that
in
was
the chat,
talked down on most of the offseason in which he was signed here, that it was an overpay, that he was a Cam Jordan merchant, that no one was paying attention to him, and that's the only reason he got sacks. Well, take that, Trey Hendrickson haters. He's proved every single one of you guys wrong.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. I mean,
Joe Burrow said after the game he should win Depoy, and I certainly agree.
The fact that TJ's the runaway favorite for that is kind of crazy to me. But
nuts.
Not that TJ doesn't deserve it. I mean, I think TJ's just as good of a pass rusher, if not better than Trey too. But the fact that Trey did it, and he was literally the only pass rusher on this Bengals defense, and could have and should have been double teamed basically every snap, and still did what he did, is pretty incredible. So if Trey isn't in the top 3 for Depoy, I'm going to be pretty disappointed. But and it's hard to see him winning it right now just because of playing for Cincinnati, and apparently nobody loves Cincinnati, because if you look at the odds right now, Cincinnati's not going to win a single major NFL award this year. That's insane.
0.
You're going to have
nuts.
You're going to have a Triple Crown winner not win an Offensive Player of the Year, not win anything. You're going to have a quarterback who, at bare minimum, should be comeback player of the year, and according to odds right now, is not the favorite, despite the fact that the favorite was not injured or anything last year, just wasn't good. And yeah, just incredible. And obviously Trey, as of right now, probably 3rd or 4th in the line for Depoy. So all of those are crazy. And look,
what's the
tip your cap
craziest?
to Saquon. Can you ask me tomorrow after the games?
Sure.
If the Bengals make the playoffs, Joe Burrow should be MVP.
Okay. I can get behind that.
He's not gonna be, but if the Bengals make the playoffs, he should be. Right now, if you were to ask me today, Trey Hendrickson not being depoy is probably the one that I would say is the
I know
the most
Saquon ran
egregious.
for 2,000 yards. The fact that Triple Crown's not going to win Offensive Player of the Year is just blowing my mind every time I see those odds. And it's not even close. It's not even like they're giving it a coin flip or it could go either way. It's runaway Saquon Barkley when Jamar Chase, not only a Triple Crown, but 101 per game. That's preposterous. A season that we haven't seen in forever, if ever, and he's not going to win the Triple Crown, or he's not going to win the Offensive Player of the Year while winning the Triple Crown. I just can't get over that.
The shortest odds right now for Jamar are plus 1,000.
That's crazy.
Plus 1,000. Depending on which book you look at.
Preseason at plus 1,000. I thought, if he gets a Triple Crown, I'll at least get a cash out opportunity.
Yep. Depending on the book, Saquon's a minus 10,000 odds winner right now.
Insane.
I mean, again,
and that's not even getting to the Darnold thing.
Right. Well, and here's the difficult part, right? Is that and this goes with probably all three of them. Most years, all three of them are shoo-ins for the awards. But the way the beginning of the season went and the outcome of that, and then couple that with the seasons that you're seeing out of Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Saquon Barkley and Sam Darnold, and the list goes on and on about guys who are, quite frankly, worthy of consideration for these types of awards. I mean, you look at Derrick Henry, who ended up, I don't remember what the exact number was, but he ended up like 30 yards short of 2,000 yards on the season as well. And he's right now like 6th on the list. I mean, Joe Burrow is going to lead the league in yards and touchdowns, and he's 5th on the list. And he's probably going to be 3rd in the MVP voting. Like,
yeah,
it really is insane. And it's not, I don't know how much of it is because they play in Cincinnati as much as it is that they're trying to gain this momentum for the awards so late in the season. You look at these other guys and they've been doing it all year long. And unfortunately, just for the Bengals, the first however many weeks just weren't going their way. And so it was really easy to write them off. And now here they are in the thick of things. You'd love for them to get the recognition that they deserve. And there's a lot of national pundits out there right now who are talking about the fact that they do deserve these recognitions. And, it'll be interesting to see how much they can sway the writers over the course of the next 2 days or however long it is before the votes are due. Because if you ask a lot of people who know football and know football well, guys like Dan Orlovsky, guys like, doesn't matter, many others, they're out there talking about how Joe Burrow should be the MVP. And we'll just see what kind of momentum they can really gain.
I think that matters for the future as well. The fact that his name is prevalently in these conversations, people are saying he's not going to win it because of the record. When we get down the line, if all things are equal, I think a lot of people will probably remember Joe Burrow didn't win one because of the record, and it might give him a boost further down the line. I think that's a lot of what we're seeing this year is voter fatigue between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. That's why Josh Allen is an overwhelming favorite at most outlets, and Lamar Jackson, though he has better numbers and won the head-to-head, he's fallen behind in those lists. I think if Josh Allen wins one this year, and now we're looking at the list of top quarterbacks in the league, and Joe Burrow is the last one with one, next time we're in one of these races, assuming the Bengals aren't sitting at 9-8 needing help from the Jets and the Chiefs to get into the playoffs, Joe Burrow might get that nod. So looking big picture, maybe not quite as upsetting as it seems.
Can you imagine if Saquon didn't have like Jalen Hurts as his quarterback, though? I think Jalen Hurts ended up with like 11 rushing touchdowns this year. I mean, imagine if Saquon added even half of those 10? And ended with like 20 rushing touchdowns.
he easily could.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And he's going to do it with sitting the last week of the season, too.
Season either. He would have broken the record if he played this week. My thing is, how many 2,000-yard seasons have there been? How many Triple Crowns have there been? I give it to the one with less if you make me pick between two incredible all-time seasons. And it's crazy that now we're talking about, I guess it's not MVP, it's Offensive Player of the Year, but we're talking about two guys that would have won this award in basically any other year, but now they're going up against each other. I'm just having Heisman flashbacks here.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up now just to see. Do you know that answer off the top of your head? If not, I have it.
8 2000s and 4 Triple Crowns, right?
Yeah, so Saquon becomes the ninth, and I guess the Triple Crown depends on when you start it, but I guess we should start it in the 60s.
That I see.
Yeah, so yeah, it would be 4. And Cooper Kupp was the last to do it in 2021.
So would be the 5th or the 4th?
Derrick Henry did it in 2020. There's currently 4. So Jerry Rice did it in 1990. Sterling Sharp did it in 92. Steve Smith Sr. in 2005. And then Cooper Kupp in 2021. So Jamar Chase would be the 5th. Saquon Barkley was the 9th.
Yeah. That's
O.J. Simpson, Eric Dickerson, Barry Sanders, Terrell Davis, Jamal Lewis, Chris Johnson, Adrian Peterson, Derrick Henry, and now Saquon Barkley. But again,
unbelievable.
Not to take anything away, but
8 clubs to join. One is half as long.
Derrick Henry, again, almost did it again this year. So how much of an accomplishment is it really? He had 1,921 yards is what the final total ended up being. So, look, it's one of those things, right, where, I think if this Bengals team did what they were supposed to do early in the season, we're not having this conversation.
Exactly.
And ultimately, you put yourself in a position to be ignored, downgraded, belittled, whatever you want to call it. But when you play like you did for the first 9 weeks of the season, that's kind of what's going to happen. So, like it or not, they have nobody to blame but themselves. And, at this point, you certainly would love to see one of those 3, if not all 3, get it at bare minimum, top 3 recognition, and at least for people to give them the recognition that they deserve. But most years, all 3 of them would be winning awards.
Yeah, no, and that's the real shame, and it goes back to the slow start, like you just said. You still start faster. Not only are we not holding our breath tomorrow, but we probably have 3 or 4 guys hoisting awards at NFL Honors in a few weeks. Well, that's going to do it for today. Feels like a little bit of a somber show for a win, but I think it's just because we know what's in front of us and the hill we have to climb tomorrow. Jets.
Tomorrow's show is going to be crazy if we get in, Jacob.
Yeah. No, we're going to be
It's going to be during the day. I'm not going to have to worry about waking up my daughter in the room down the hall. We're going to be trust me, you're going to want to be here tomorrow if we get in the playoffs.
I hope we get it.
This chat's going to be jumping. Jacob and I are going to be potentially literally jumping. It'll be crazy.
Oh, man. Hopefully we have playoff games to talk about. I've had a thrill doing it this year. Thank you to everyone who supported us. And hopefully we're talking about a playoff berth tomorrow. Hooday, everybody. Good win, 9-8. 3-3 in the division. Sneaky 500 for Zach Taylor. There we go. Love to see it. Finished above 500. Hooday, everybody. Let's sneak in. Go Jets, go Chiefs.
Hooday.